Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Kelvin Weber and this is another tutorial for our project. In this video I am going to explain and show you how you can add new clothing to your project. We will be using the Mutable plugin since it's the core system in our project and the preferred way to create new character skins. I've already prepared a Suite mesh and I'm going to import it into the project. Now keep in mind that we're using metahumans as our character base, which means there is an important requirement for clothing. It has to be built on the metahuman skeleton. If you're not using metahumans and your characters are based on a different skeleton, then your clothing must be rigged to that same skeleton to correctly follow your character's movements. Next, we need to create a new static mesh. For interactive objects placed in the world, we always use static meshes, since they are much more optimized for this purpose than skeletal meshes. After that, we need to set up collision for the static mesh. Without collision, you won't be able to interact with the item in the world. To create and add new items to the project, we have a special utility called Items Assistant. This tool lets you add new items to your project in just a few seconds and can save you a lot of time. As you can see, all the required data assets have been created. Now we need to fill them in. The utility also automatically created an interactable actor. You can notice two parameters here, mutable section and mutable parameter. These parameters are used inside the customizable object of the character's skin. Mutable section is a global slot name that defines where this type of clothing will appear. We have several slots in total, You can check them by opening the inventory. For example, jacket, pants, shoes. If you want the clothing item to be placed in a specific slot, you need to change the type tag parameter to the clothing type you need and set the mutable section to the name of that slot. The item's assistant utility does all of this automatically for you. Mutable parameter is the unique name of the clothing item that the player can use. It's very important to keep this value unique. In this example, the mutable parameter is named shot_sweater_1. That postfix helps uniquely identify the clothing item. Now we need to create a new skin for the clothing. This step is needed in case you don't want to use the Mutable plugin. In this video I won't cover how to add clothing without using the Mutable plugin, but I will definitely explain it in a future tutorial. However, I highly recommend using the Mutable plugin. We will leave the inventory texture parameter empty for now. Just keep in mind that the clothing icon can be generated automatically. We will do that later in this video. For now, set inventory texture type to generated texture. If you remember from the previous tutorials, I promised to show you how to configure crafting data for an item, and now it's time to do that. Each item's data asset has a crafting section. Let's take a closer look at its parameters. The first one is special craft condition. This parameter defines whether additional conditions are required for the player to craft the item. Minimal level. If the player's level is lower than the value set in the item's data asset, they won't be able to craft that item. The second condition is studied skill. This defines whether the player can craft the item only after learning a specific skill in the skill tree. In our case, let's use this type of restriction and set that this clothing item can only be crafted if the player has learned the nylon skill in the skill tree. To craft the short sweater, the player will need to learn that specific skill. By the way, all the skills are stored in a special database. You can also find the skill tree inside the widgets, as I'm showing you on the screen right now. In the components array, you can specify which items are required to craft the desired item. You can also set the number of required items and the number of items the player will receive after crafting. Make sure to note that I set the level design mode parameter to true when I added this item to the scene. That's very important because in this case, the actor will know that it needs to initialize itself. Alright, it's time to generate an icon for our new clothing item. As you can see, sometimes the generated image doesn't automatically import into the project. That's a known Unreal Engine bug, but it's very easy to fix. Just locate the icon in your file explorer and drag it directly into the content browser inside Unreal Engine. For inventory functionality, you need to generate two icons. The first one is small and it's used to display which item is placed in the inventory slot. And the second one is larger and it's used to show the item in the equipment slot. Our sweater can only be equipped by the player if they are using a specific character skin. To define which character skins can wear a particular clothing item, you need to edit the visualization mode parameter. For example, in this case, the player can only equip the sweater when using the character skin named Calvin, yes, it's me. Also, make sure to set the initialization and visualization type of clothing to the one you need. In our case, that's mutable object. Alright, now let's set up a new customizable object for the clothing. To do this, we will copy an existing one and then configure it from scratch. By default, the character's body and head have 4 LOD levels. It's recommended that the clothing has the same number of LODs. You can find more information on how to use the Mutable plugin in the official documentation. For example, let's add a few new parameter types. The first parameter is decals that the player can apply to the sweater. This is an enumeration type parameter. In the extra information field, it's very important to provide a few key details. The first one is a unique name for the clothing object. In our case, shirt sweater 1. Also, if you want the parameter list for customizing the clothing's appearance to show images instead of text, add a new tag in extra information called use thumbnails. The object-friendly name parameter is the name that will appear in the list of customizable options for the clothing. The UI section name parameter is the name of the slot where the customizable clothing is located, in our case, jacket. To allow changing the clothing's color, you can use two types of parameters. The first one is a color parameter, and the second one is a database with pre-added colors. I will add both of these parameter types for demonstration purposes. When using the data table parameter, it's very important to fill in the options UI metadata column value. From the drop-down list, select metadata. Metadata is a column in the database, and the values in this column tell the engine how to properly visualize this parameter. Next, you need to fill in the extra information parameter. It should contain several values. Use thumbnails if you want the parameter options to be displayed as images. And hide label. This parameter hides the name of this option in the widget that shows all available clothing parameters. In other words, if a value is included in the extra information array, the name from object-friendly name will not be shown in the widget.
Надеюсь, что от крови тебе не будет гадко, но не переживай, я работаю
The clip mesh with the mesh node allows you to hide parts of the character's body that are underneath the clothing. To be honest, this is one of the main reasons I choose to use the Mutable plugin for character skins and clothing in our project. By the way, if you are using a semi-transparent icon for displaying clothing in the inventory, meaning it has an alpha channel, it's very important to add a new value called useGenerated_icons to the extra information array. I want to emphasize this applies both to generated icons and to any icons you create yourself, as long as they have an alpha channel.
Придурок, постмодернист. Меня много женщин любит, постмодернист. Политика, футбол, войны, деньги, баскетбол. Это все не для меня, с этим встретимся потом. Инфляция и спид по карте или ром. Загрузи свои мозги через старый CD-ROM.
As you can see, the widget for customizing the clothing's appearance doesn't show these parameters we created for the shot suite. This is because we forgot to add these parameters to the main list of parameters in the main customizable object of our skin. The Mutable plugin, as far as I remember, is still experimental, so sometimes there are bugs where not all parameters appear in the runtime parameter list. To fix this, simply close and reopen the customizable object and everything will display correctly. Now let's add new float parameters that will control the size and opacity of the decals on our clothing. The process for adding a new parameter is the same, so let's do this quickly.
Мне здесь ничего не светит, а в кожаных туфлях несколько
Guys, I want to remind you that it's very important to include a value with the unique name of your clothing in the extra information field. Without this, the parameter won't appear in the list of available options during gameplay.
Сегодня мне скучно и совсем не с кем поговорить. Набираю номер знакомый за мной. Заезжает таксист, называю адрес наугад. Мы едем, что хватает силы. Под грязной иномаркой расходится земля. Дымятся как сигары все четыре шины. Гонки который нет денег на новый. Я слушаю его, не понимая ни слова. Он простой таксист, мужчина работящий. С виду скользкий, но в душе настоящий. Гонки который нет денег на новый. Я слушаю его, не понимая ни слова. Он простой таксист, мужчина работящий. С виду скользкий, но в душе настоящий.
As you can see, what I warned about earlier has happened. The Mutable plugin still has some bugs. For example, right now I can't find the parameter we just created. Let's simply close and reopen our customizable object, and I think this will fix the issue. And as you can see, everything is working perfectly now.
Тройной одеколон. Приятный запах, ностальгический запах. От женщин нет покоя, очередь на весь дом. Одеколон. На весь дом. Одеколон. О-о-о-о. Солдатские духи. Себя два бутылька. И убегает жена, не успевает надеть сапоги. Жена. Сапоги. Жена. А-а-а-а-а. Люблю советский я парфюм и презираю зарубежный. Выпиваю по 2 цента в день и наполняю жизнь надеждой. Люблю советский я парфюм, меня никто не понимает. Он убивает комаров и лучше пива расслабляет. Ты очень зол и невоспитан, дерешься больно, неприятно в твоих глазах. Не видно цели, но бьешь меня ты очень складно. Хоть какой-то есть талант в таком забытом богом теле. Хоть какой-то есть азарт, от боли ребра занемели. Но за что я не пойму, ты бьешь меня не уставая. Давай с тобой обсудим книги, я принесу чашечку чая. Но за что я не пойму, ты бьешь меня не уставая.
Now let's test the item crafting mechanic. As you remember, to craft this sweater we need 4 units of nylon, and the player must have learned the skill that allows working with nylon. This skill can only be learned if the player reaches level 2, so let's quickly do that and try crafting the sweater. Well, thank you so much for watching, my friends. I hope everything was clear and easy to follow. As always, this was your host, Kelvin Weber. Thanks for watching again, and I will see you in the next videos.